Welcome back to this video series on the home buying process start to finish. I'm Joshua with all things mortgage related. In today's video, let's talk about making a great offer. So you've already gone through pre-approval, you've got yourself a fantastic agent, and now you're ready to make an offer. Now, depending on what state you're in, your sales contracts are going to look different. You're going to have different legalese in that. So we're not going to talk about the legalese stuff on your sales contract. Definitely talk with your real estate agent. Have them go through that contract with you in detail before you make the offer so you understand what you're signing before you make the offer. With that said, also, as we get into this video, just a little disclaimer, I'm not a licensed real estate agent, so I'm not giving real estate advice. I'm talking about what I've seen in my 20 years and things in contracts that can be strong from a seller perspective or perhaps weak from a seller perspective. So it's about helping you get your offer accepted. Okay, so let's jump right into it and talk about things to consider. So let's get the big one out of the way, price. Yes, pricing is important. And obviously, if you come in and you way undercut somebody, it's not a strong offer. But, if you actually come in too aggressive on the price, that can also be weak in your offer. Why would that be? Well, if you're not a cash buyer, and even with cash buyers, sometimes they come in stronger, they don't always get accepted because of this first concern. Are they giving me a really strong offer so that they can get me into contract? Everybody else that might want to make an offer on my house moves on. And then they're going to get the home inspections and start to nickel and dime me and get this price down lower and all of a sudden ask for concessions or lower my price. That is a concern. The second concern is if you're not a cash buyer and say you come $20,000 over asking price, what happens if the appraisal doesn't come in $20,000 over asking price? That's a very real concern. And so if you get too aggressive, and again, let's just say you have multiple offers here and you come in 20,000 over, somebody else comes in 25,000 over, they actually might take the 20 if they think that even the 20 is a bit of a stretch because they think it has the highest likelihood of succeeding. So price is important, but it's not always the highest price. The next thing is you want to be fully approved. And we talked about this in the pre-approval process, but your team making that offer is important, and having that pre-approval letter actually in hand when you make the offer is important. You'd be surprised at how many people will make an offer and they'll just say, well, the pre-approval letter to follow within 3 days of acceptance. Now, they can accept that for sure, but that just doesn't give as strong of an indication when somebody comes in there and here's my letter. So I'm not the highest price. I'm 5,000 less than this other guy, but hey, I got a great team working for me, great reputation, and here's my letter saying I'm good to go. That's very helpful. Now, here's another tip that you might do if you're not working, if the lender you're working with doesn't suggest this. I like to actually make my letters for my clients specific to the offer and even go a little bit beyond that. So what I mean is if they're going to, if my client's qualified for 500,000, but they're going to offer 390 on a $400,000 home, I'm not going to tell them that qualify for 500. I'm going to make my letter specific to 390. If my client wants them to pay closing cost, I'm going to put that into my letter, even if it's not required, just to make it seem like what my client's asking for is what's needed and what they qualify for. But beyond that, I'll do the extra touch of looking up who is the seller, and I will address my letter to the seller versus to the agents involved. So when the seller's sitting down looking at it and they see their name, it's just a little bit of a personal touch. All these little tiny things start to play in on all the decisions they have to make. Last but not least, in regards to pre-approval letter, if I have the buyer's agent's approval and the buyer's approval, I will call the seller's agent, introduce myself, introduce my team, how we work together, and reiterate what's in the letter that this is a qualified client. We do not expect any problems through the transaction, and we're looking forward to working with them should they accept the offer. So those are types of things that you can actually do in your pre-approval letter and have done when you present your offer to make it stand out. Now, let's talk about closing timelines. Again, the traditional sales contract, at least here in Oregon, is 30 days. But how you structure this contract and adjust that can be a benefit as well on how you do this. What you should be doing is having your agent reach out, or your agent should be doing this for you, but reach out to the seller's agent and find out what is important to the client. What's their main things that they want to see on a contract? Because for some client, it is going to be pricing, but for others, it might be, hey, I need to close this loan fast. Can your lender guarantee to close this loan in 15 days? Because if so, I'll take less money because I got to move on. Something's important's going on in my life. I need to get this done and move on. But for other people, that would actually be a turnoff because maybe for them, it's like, hey, I've been in this house for 20 years. I have a ton of stuff I have to pack. I'm really stressing about this. And if you were to go in there knowing that and offer them 45 days to close, they might like that more than the fast close. Or perhaps you go in there and you offer them, hey, I'll give you a quick close if you like, but I will give you 2 weeks after closing to get moved out, or 3 weeks after closing. So that gives them the low stress of my house is sold, it's not falling apart, it's done. And now I get 2 weeks to pack up. So I don't have to start packing in hopes that the deal actually closes. So that's a really good tip there on how you can make an offer and make it stand out and maybe win on not just price. Let's talk earnest money. So earnest money is the money you put down with your offer. It says, look, if you accept my offer, I'm going to put this money into escrow. And if I don't perform per the contracts, then you can have this earnest money. But should I perform to the terms of the contracts, that counts as your down payment. Or if you back out within your terms, then that comes back to you. Now, a traditional earnest money amount might be 1% of the sales price. So on $400,000, that's $4,000 in earnest money. That does get counted towards your down payment and or closing costs, so you're not losing that. But if you go in and offer maybe 2%, so you give them $8,000, that makes your offer look more attractive. Even if you compared to the person next to you, everything else being equal, and they did 1%, you did 2%, maybe you have the worst credit and the highest debt ratio, and things are very kind of hanging on, but they don't know that. All they know is your letter says you're approved. You've put down a nice earnest money that's larger than normal. That can be something that gets their offer accepted. The last thing on the strong offer side I want to touch on is your inspection period. Now, I will always tell my clients, if they ask my opinion, get a home inspection. And I don't care if you're a contractor. I mean, if you're actually a solid contractor, okay, maybe that's different. But if you're a handyman, you're used to working on things, you're pretty handy around the house, don't do the home inspection yourself, my opinion. It's worth a professional home inspection to go around, crawl in the crawl space, crawl in the attic, inspect everything. Your agent will advise whether or not you should have other kind of tests like sewer inspections or radon tests or whatever, well water tests, sewer septic tests. There can be all kinds of inspections, but get them. They're important. Now, with that said, if you wanted to make a strong offer, you could choose to waive those inspections and says, I won't even do it. Again, I wouldn't recommend it, but yes, that will definitely be something attractive to the seller because now they know that there's not really an issue of you coming back and asking them to fix a bunch of stuff that they don't know about. But other ways of getting the inspection, but still making the offer strong could be, look, I'm going to get my home inspections. I'm going to do my due diligence. However, I'm not going to make my buying your house or my earnest money contingent on those inspections. You can do it that way. Or you can say, hey, I'm going to do my inspections. And unless something major comes up that's a requirement of the lender to be repaired, I won't ask you to do it. I'll take care of it myself. That is also a good, strong inspection period versus just the standard one. And last but not least, I would say is perhaps you go, hey, I want to get my inspections. And, as long as the items in the report are not major and cost less than $2,000 to do it, and it's not required by my lender to get it done, then I won't worry about it. So these are all different ways of you being able to do your inspection, but signal to the seller that you're not going to be nitpicking them. Because again, even with cash buyers, one of the concerns agents have with strong cash buyers is they seem like they're strong because they say cash, but agents have learned over time that sometimes they can be the most picky on the home inspections and start wanting you to fix everything because they figure since they're cash, they're entitled to the absolute clean house. And so that's something to consider. Now, really quick, let's just move over before we wrap this up here and talk about some things you can put in your offer that might be beneficial to you, but it is making the offer look a little bit weaker. And so something to consider. The first one's kind of a big one, and it's something that's actually very, very common. So I'm not saying you can't do it. We do it all the time. But again, if you're comparing apples to apples, will show a little weakness. And that has to be asking the seller to pay your closing cost. So particularly with first-time home buyers where you're doing everything you can just to come up with your down payment, having your down payment and your closing costs and your first year's taxes and homeowners insurance, all this starts to add up. So sometimes it's just simply required in order for the buyer to be able to purchase a home that they need seller concessions. But regardless of whether or not it's something you need, you can always ask for it. So what am I talking about? So let's just say hypothetically your closing costs, your first year taxes and homeowners insurance, all that stuff add up to $10,000. You want to make a $400,000 price on offer on a $400,000 listed home, but you need those closing costs. So you might increase your offer to $410,000, ask the seller to pay $10,000 closing costs. They're getting $400,000, but now you're not having to come up with that money. Now, even though they're getting what they're asking for, that does come up to look weaker because one, appraisal concerns, does a home appraise for 410, but two, you're kind of signaling you don't have any cash. Now, this isn't always true. I have lots and lots of times where I have like veterans, VA, 100% financing, and they have plenty of cash. They just don't want to use their cash for the house, and so they'll do this. But from the seller's perspective, they don't know that. All they know is, okay, this person's asking for a higher price point. I might have an appraisal issue if it doesn't appraise for that. And they're asking for it because they must need it. So they don't have any cash to cover anything. So again, something to consider. It's a good strategy to help reduce your cash to close. It is very, very common. But if you get into a very hot market where you have to be competitive, it will be a headwind for you. The other thing that makes an offer weak is contingent offer. So this is most commonly done with somebody who already owns a home, but you're basically saying, hey, look, I want to buy your home, but before I buy it, I have to sell my home first. So it's contingent. So I'll do it, but I got to do this first. And again, that's a weakness because the seller's going to take their house off the market. They're going to put it in pending status, which people don't usually look at pending homes. So they don't write backup offers on that. And you might keep them in that offer for 30 days. They've lost that ability to sell in a prime market, and then your house never sells. And that's an issue. So again, it can be done. And if it's necessary for you to get your house, go for it. Try it. But that's going to be a headwind. Earnest money, we talked about that. So high earnest money is great. So the opposite of that is low earnest money. You can actually put down no earnest money if you wanted to, or a dollar. But obviously, the lower you put down, it just signals weakness to the seller. So think about your earnest money. If you can save the money, again, that earnest money does count towards your down payment, counts towards your closing cost. If you're happen to do like 100% financing where you have no money down and the seller's paying all your closing costs, that earnest money would then come back to you at close. So it's just a deposit unless you don't perform with the contract. Last thing that might make your offer weak is a low down payment. And again, this is one of those things that it might just be what you have to do. Maybe you got to go with a 3% down program or a 0% down program. But you know what? If you're looking at multiple offers, everything else is the same. One person's putting 10% down, one's doing 20% down offer, stronger offer is probably going to get accepted. So think about that when you're structuring and deciding how much do I want to put down, what do I want to do. These are all things. I don't know that this is an all-inclusive list, but this is a very good list to help get you started and understanding from a seller's perspective what you can do to make your offer stand out amongst the others so you don't always have to win on price. All right, if you found this helpful, again, I know it gets a little bit long, but a lot of information to cover. Hit the thumbs up, subscribe so you can get other information and know when it comes up. Share it with your friends and family. Put your comments down below. I look forward to reading them and have a great day.